So to continue on with adding detail using a shaper tool, what I'm going to do now is look at this area along here and try and build up some light and a nice edge along that cloud. If you look at the photograph here again, as you can see, there's a really nice area just along there, quite bold. There's some nice broken up cloud in that area there, so I'm going to do that there and then head along here for some more colour. But we're going to start off over here. Now, earlier on what I did was I put the purple down here and I built the cloud bank down the way, and I worked my way down, and I deliberately pushed that purple a bit further down because I thought it was slightly too high before, so I pushed it in and just worked it down a bit. So I've ended up with quite a messy area along here, which is what I like. I like it to look quite messy when I'm doing clouds, because I think it works better if you actually get all the different shades and different shades of purples and greys and pinks and so on there first, and then cut back in with the light and then create your clouds out of it using the negative space, so working reverse really. So I'm going to go back in with that really quite bold, bright mustard grey, that's its technical term again, and just pressing quite hard this time. So this is different to previous times, and I've said go in quite gently, don't press too hard. This time I'm saying no, go in, press hard. You want to really fill it up, but I'm still using that dabbing mark and I'm still using the side of the pastel. I'm not using the tip yet. So I'm using that shaded grey and adding a bit of this warmer colour here, so it's slightly brighter, slightly warmer. I'm just nibbling it in there and just putting it in, tipping and tilting the pastel a bit, but not using the entire tip of the pastel at all yet, still the flat area, and just overlayering those two colours together. Now the reason I'm doing it firmly is because I want to really cover up that previous mark, get rid of that slightly murky crowd that was along there earlier and make it quite bright. Let's put a little hint of colour in that as well, a bit of that nice warm colour that was from the bit that was further up. Now again, blow the excess off. Now next step then is to get the shaper tool. So I'm going to run along here and just blend that in. Now I'm not going to blend very heavily, so it's very easy at this stage to over blend your light areas like this, and you end up with the whole thing disappearing. If I press hard enough, like for example this bit here, if I press really quite hard, the whole thing goes again, it's just gone, disappears off. Handy if you've done a mistake, that's fine, it's very useful, but not so useful if you actually want to have a nice bit of contrast in there. So again, pressing firmly with the pastel, putting plenty on the surface and getting in there with the shaper tool, then running along this edge here. So a little circular move, but just very delicately. Now the key thing here again is that you're holding it quite flat. If you go up like this, what you're going to end up doing is digging up, and actually you end up with like a line of pastel, and it will take it away and you get like a little ridge of pastel happening. You don't want that, so try and keep it flat. You shouldn't see a load of powder appearing in front of your shaper. If you do see it, you're either at the wrong angle or you are pressing too hard. So I'm just drifting along, letting that pastel just blend in. Then already I'm getting quite a nice firm line along here, as you can see. Now I'm going to go again, so another layer with a quite bright one I think, and just get on in there. Now again, the same as I did last time. Do you remember on the colourful cloud bank that was further up over that way at the top, I did a layer and I rubbed it in, and then I put another layer of colour on top, but the second time round I didn't put as much on, I didn't do it quite the same distance. The same applies here, so I'm putting some more on, but I'm not going everywhere, I'm just going in there, and this time I really am using the tip of the pastel. You may finally use the tip of your pastels if you want to. So I'm really drawing a bit more along the edge there. I'm really being quite firm. I want plenty of pastel on there so it stays as a dominant colour on the surface, and just really pressing it in. You can probably hear me pressing it in, which is different to before. So, and I'm just working along that edge. Again, brush off the excess or blow it off, and then just again going over with the shaper, but I am barely touching it there. The weight of the shaper is all that's on the surface there. I'm not pushing with the down, I'm not pressing under my finger like that. I'm just drifting along, holding it very lightly, and just in little swirling movements, putting no extra pressure on there virtually at all. And that way the colour will stay dominant. And of course in places where I want it to be more blended, I will then press harder. For example, at this end where I want it to sort of fade out a bit more into this cloud bank, I will then press a bit harder, tip up, and that scrapes a bit of it off a bit, moves it around more, and you get that variety, and you can probably hear it's slightly more than you could before. So here I was drifting along, barely touching. Here I've worked it in. You get a softness or a boldness, depending what you want. And I want that nice firm edge there. So I'm going to flip over. I'm going to go down the way now. So I'm going to come in from behind here and just push that darker colour down a little bit into that, and just break that edge up slightly, just to change that shape a little bit along there. Again, blow the excess off. Now, the bottom bit here, I want to get a stronger line of dark cloud along there. So I might go back in a little bit with some of that purple and just put a little bit of the purple back up into there. So it's a similar thing to what we did before with the paler areas sky high up. It's this sort of push-pull thing. So you're going along there and just adding a bit more edging on there. So it's a slightly more bumpy look along here now. And I'm going to use the shaper and just drift along there and just pull that around, just to push that up into there. Again, not very much, barely touching at it. What you don't want though is a regular set of lumps along there. You don't want a set of like strange little hills or anything. You want it to look more like a cloud. So keeping it slightly erratic and slightly varied is very important at this stage. Then there's also a bit of a brighter colour through here. So I'm going to go in again, but this time I'm going to use some of that peachy colour, which we're using the sky further up, and just put a little bit of that peach along that edge there. Now I'm using a very tiny bit of peach here. I'm just putting the corner of the pastel on the surface there and just dabbing at it with little dots and dashes. So it really is quite delicate and quite detailed. Again, blow the excess off and then put a little bit down through here. I'm just going to change direction there and just dab at it a bit there, just to break up the colour of that cloud a little bit there, and just work that in back and forward. Quite vigorously with the shaper to blend that in, but along here with the smaller dabs, just delicately move along that surface there, just to change the colour of that a little bit. And again, a bit more along this edge as well, so it's pulling all the different parts of the picture together a little bit with the palette. So just smudge that in there as well. And then finally go back in with that really bright colour and just be this time working on the tips. It's about the 4th or 5th layer maybe of this I've been putting on here. And before that there was quite a few layers underneath as well. So you do keep building, and this one I'm really pressing quite hard and I'm really getting in there. But I'm using little dots, swirls, dashes. I'm not doing a solid block here. I'm gradually just eating into it. Then blow the excess off. And you should get to the stage where you almost don't want to do much with the shaper or your finger. You're just softening that in to get the excess dust off the surface there, but really very much leaving it so you get this lovely light coming along this area here. Okay, so the next thing then is to move further along and just look at this edge here. So it's this bit just along there. So similar idea, but this not quite as bright. Obviously this is much brighter than this area here. So this area here, we're going to go in with that more muted tone and just, again, firmly eat in underneath that cloud there. And then again, firmly, another colour as well. This quite bold peach colour here. And then a second more pink tone. Really building along that cloud there and just using that as my edging there, and then using the shape again, just drifting along, not too firmly, don't over rub it, keep it flat and let those just interact and just keep it moving along there. Now there's then the issue with the horizon along here as well, isn't there? So we have to deal with this next as well. It's the wrong colour at the moment, so we need to add some more of that pale cream peach tone we used earlier. I'm just going to go along here and just add a little bit of that in there and add some of that warm tone through there as well. I'm not worrying about the edge of this particularly yet. I'm just going to deal with the actual cloud, and we'll come back to the edge of that later. So I'm just changing the colour along there a little bit. A bit more pale than that one, a bit more pale through there. And again, just smudge that along. I'm going to use the shaper quite boldly this time though. I want it to really move along here. So I'm just going to cut through. So at this point I'm tipping up a bit more with the angle. So rather than being flat, I'm going up. You can see how my hand's raising there, and just really cutting into it and just slicing it along to get a bit of movement there. So having done the light areas here and here, there's then the darker bits to do. So having done, I'd like at least 3 or 4 shades. Again, this whole thing about having 3 or 4 shades with whatever area you're working on, whether you're working on a dark or a light area, try and have 3 or 4 shades. And then I'm going to go in now with my purples and start to do some work along here and add some darkness as well. So let's put a bit of dark through here. Now you don't need a great deal to go on, so unlike the light area, it's just a little bit of dark. So put a bit on there. And then another shade of the purple as well. And I think I'm going to use the pink as my 3rd shade. I want to give that sort of warmth to it as well. So just drifting along there, just keeping it quite bold but quite thin on the surface. And then I think I might use my finger actually first, because it's quite a large area. I think let's go with my finger first and just get that softened in. And then along here the same sort of thing. I don't want to over soften, I don't want to make it disappear. I want to make sure it's still there. So just keeping the finger marks quite loose. You can see it's just looking slightly stronger through here and slightly stronger through there. So you can just keep building that as needed really, to the point where you're happy with what you've got. So again, I can go back in with the light again now. Add a bit more colour through there. And again, this idea of push-pull, you sort of add a bit, take away a bit, add a bit more, and just keep building until you're happy with it. Now, on the picture here, there are some interesting shapes that are coming down through here, which is quite nice in the photograph, but I don't know if that will translate very well into this, because it'll be right in the middle of the picture here as well. So I'm just going to break the cloud up through here and be a bit more loose with it. So, you know, artistic license and all that, you don't have to be utterly faithful to your photo. So I'm going to just go along here and just play with a little bit with capturing the mood of the piece, but not trying to be an exact copy of what that cloud bank there is doing. So I'm just going to break it up along there using my 2 or 3 shades again. So a couple of different shades, because I am bearing in mind that I don't use my blues next to this sort of more yellowy toned colour and so on, so you don't get a strange mixture when you add things together. So just doing some loose movements along there, as you can see, just breaking it up through there. And then I'm going to use my shaper and just crisscross a little bit over that. So crisscross, as you can see, along here, pulling it around quite firmly and just creating some interesting cloud effects there. So you get a nice surface happening here. And the same applies to here. We've got a strange effect, we've got this light here, then we've got a sort of bank of cloud that comes up this way, which doesn't really make sense. I'm going to just, I think, take a bit more of this light through this area here in a darker shade though. So let's go in with that kind of orange peach again. And just, again, loose mark making, dots and dashes, different marks across there. Breaking it up and then just firmly crisscrossing over it. Right, okay, so that'll do for progress so far with this area. Each of these things we need to come back to and add to for final steps later, but I'm just starting to really pull it together and starting to get the palette to be coherent across the whole piece.